Jungle, I'm Matt Edwards. We will continue to talk about this failure of a 2024 season. We'll try to get some positive spins in where we can. But first and foremost, we will tell you the truth. I say we, it's just me here. It's me looking into a camera. There's no one else in the room. My daughter's asleep upstairs. It's late at night. I'm tired. I'm ready to go to bed. I cracked open a Rheingeist. I'm ready to roll. Let's get into it. Not the best week in Bengaldom. Evan McPherson and Logan Wilson both going to miss pretty much the rest of the season. McPherson could come back for a game or two. Orlando Brown Jr., he's banged up. He's doubtful for Monday night. You might as well put him down for the rest of the year as well. We had to relive that Steelers loss on Hard Knocks. Hard Knocks was a lot of fun. It makes you realize some of the things the other teams in this division have that the Bengals and the Browns, but we don't care about them, that those teams have that we do not. And Lou Anarumo, by the way, still defensive coordinator of your Cincinnati Bengals. I don't think anyone's really surprised by that. But I do think it would have been kind of a soothing feel to a lot of fans out there. The Bengals not typically ones to make any sort of coaching changes during the season, and especially someone who's been there that long. Thanks for tuning in. If you're still hanging in there, you're a diehard, give yourself a pat on the back. If you're still around, you've been around for much worse than what the Bengals are going through right now. Although I don't know. I actually don't think that's true, and I think I talked about this a couple weeks ago because the expectations were so different this year. That's why this one hurts so much. As a Bengals fan, like being 4-8, we've been there before. It's the fact that Joe Burrow is playing on an MVP level, and we had the expectations that if he was out there, yeah, they're going to be in the playoffs. If he's able to play all 17 games, the floor before the season, I said was 10-7. That floor is now, we've sunk through the floor. The floor fell all the way the hell through. We are in trouble. We'll get into a lot of things here. Should the Bengals rest their stars? That's a question people are asking. If the defensive struggles are on Lou Anarumo, we talked about that. Maybe it has more to do with just that. I know it's easy to pin it on one guy. We'll go through a little bit of that. And what else do we have here? Oh, at the end of the show, to ruin everyone's time while they listen to this, I'm going to go through playoff scenarios. So that'll be fun. Because as crazy as it sounds, they're not completely out of it. It's crazy, but just wait. We'll get to it eventually. It is interesting. I don't know if interesting is a word. It's sad. Sad is probably a much better word. The Bengals playing on Monday night in Dallas, in Jerry World. Monday Night Football in front of the country. It's a game that, if you're only listening on audio, I'm boozing while I do this. So, it's if I take a pause, I'm taking a swallow of beer. It's a game that prior to the season, this was massive. The NFL put this game here for a reason. Bengals, Cowboys, December, playoff implications on the line. Could it be a Super Bowl preview? No, it's a dud. So it's just kind of, there's really not a lot to talk about with the Cowboys game. Sure, it's fun to play on Monday Night Football. They're doing the whole Simpsons thing. That's going to be cool. But what a letdown that this game is pretty much nothing in the grand scheme of things. So let's get into this first. I think it's easy at this point in the year to kind of say, well, moving forward, what do the Bengals do? Of course, that's what you say. Those are the questions you ask because the season itself, there's still going to be some excitement. You got Jamar chasing the Triple Crown. You've got Joe Burrow, who it feels like the MVP candidacy should have been there in October, and now people are realizing how great he is, and there's like some national people out there saying, yeah, he should be an MVP consideration despite being on a losing team. Whatever. There's a lot of fun things to still follow about this team. There's still a lot of fun things as far as 4-8 teams go. Joe Burrow talked about that today during his press conference. But the question I've seen asked the most or discussed the most is, NFL.com, they've got the Bengals at a 3% chance to make the playoffs. 3%. It gets even worse if you go to the New York Times playoff predictor. They've got the Bengals at 1%. So, who we've got out there on the field. Joe Burrow has an injury history. Trey Hendrickson banged up all the time. Turns 30 years old today. Jamar Chase limited with an ankle today. We know that T. Higgins gets beat up a lot. Orlando Brown Jr. Right there those are their 4 best players. 5 best players. Literally, those are the 5 best players, and they all have either A, an injury history, or B, are currently battling through injuries. I think I mentioned Jamar Chase limited today with an ankle injury. Do you shut those guys down? Do you put the cornerstones of your franchise and say, hey, we're going to make sure you're good for 2025. We've still got 4 games left, 5 games left. Let's make sure no one has any lingering issues after this waste of a season is over. That's the question that's popping up, right? At what point do you call it? And do you say, hey, we sit our guys down? Burrow said today the playoffs are probably out of reach. In air quotes, those were his words. It hurt me to hear him say that. The playoffs are probably out of reach. He, of course, is right. But the answer to this is no. And I understand it. Maybe the smarter thing is to shut them down. But A, I don't think the NFL is going to allow that. And B, until you're mathematically eliminated, I mean, even the Cleveland Browns still have like a 0.4 shot at making the playoffs. The only team completely eliminated right now are the Raiders. So the answer is no, absolutely not. You do not shut your stars down this early. Week 18, sure, maybe. Joe Burrow again said today he likes to go out there. He likes to play. He wants to play on Monday Night Football. They want to put on a show. These guys are chasing records. These guys are, I mean, Jamar could get the Triple Crown. I think only 3 or 4 receivers have done that in the modern era. Of course, the most recent being Cooper Kupp a few years back when he won Offensive Player of the Year. I think that was the Super Bowl year. But no, you don't, and it's not the message you send either. I've talked all year. I couldn't say this. I mean, I'm sure there are very good arguments as to why you shut guys down. For me to go on this podcast all year and say, hey, you got to be tougher. You got to be tougher in the AFC North, and then you shut your guys down with a couple weeks left to play. If you want to do it in Week 18, fine. But right now, absolutely not. What are we talking about? You're mathematically still alive, and we'll get into that later. I promise it's not as crazy as it seems. And you're playing in the AFC North. We know what this division is. You got to be tougher. That's been a big problem for the Bengals. The missed tackles on Sunday against Pittsburgh, I think there were 14 of them. You got to toughen up. You got to be a tough team in this division, and shutting your guys down doesn't send that message. So, not a big deal. It wasn't going to happen anyways, not with 4 or 5 games left, but wanted to address that because in theory, it's smart. I wouldn't have a problem if they did do it, but absolutely not. It's not going to happen. It sends the wrong message with anything more than 2 weeks left. Maybe with 2 weeks left, you say, hey, Joe Burrow, rolled his ankle in practice. We're just going to shut him down for the year. Maybe you do that. Of course, guys like Orlando Brown, you might not see him again. You probably shouldn't. You don't send that message. Week 18, sure. Right now, absolutely not. You got to put the hat on, go to work. So that's that. The thing I really want to talk about, and we kind of touched on this last week, or not last week, it would have been Sunday after the Steelers' disaster of a game. You know, it's easy to say, and I mentioned at the top of the show, Lou Anarumo still the defensive coordinator. So what's more likely on defense? This is what I was thinking about. Because are all of these guys bad players? Are all of the Bengals, everyone on the Bengals defense, with the exception of Trey Hendrickson and Logan Wilson and B.J. Hill, and you go 50-50 on some other times. Sometimes you get a solid version of Jermaine Pratt. Sam Hubbard's been hit or miss this year. There's been some role players. Joseph Osai, for what he is, has been fine. Jordan Battle, for what he is, has been fine. But do all these guys just stink? Because it's easy to say, we got to get rid of Cam Taylor-Britt. Sam Hubbard's got to go. He's too old. Sheldon Rankins, out another week. What's going on? Geno Stone, got to go. Can't tackle. He's slow. Are all of those guys bad? Or are they not being put in position to succeed? Something's got to be true, right? Like, what are the odds that all of the Bengals defensive players just suck? All of these NFL starters. Geno Stone was solid in Baltimore. Sheldon Rankins, I know he hasn't played in a few weeks. He was good in Texas with Houston. They just come here and they stink. Cam Taylor-Britt was good for like a couple years. Really good, actually. Just bad all of a sudden? Some guys you understand. Sam Hubbard's banged up. He's getting older. Same thing can be said for Jermaine Pratt and Von Bell. But all these guys at once? So I kind of wonder, as we sit and we say, well, this guy needs bench, that guy's got to go. Are they the problem, or are they not being put in position to succeed? Those are the things you got to figure out. Let's take a look at this real quick. Let's look back at the draft picks. And there's more to the guys who were down on the field on Sundays. I think you know who I'm talking about. 2023, their first 3 draft picks, Myles Murphy, who I don't even mention. We don't even think about him anymore. And he was the number 1 draft pick last year out of Clemson. First 3 picks in 2023, Myles Murphy, defensive end out of Clemson, DJ Turner, cornerback out of Michigan. And in the third round, they took Jordan Battle, who of the three has probably been the most productive, Alabama safety. Okay. If you got those guys in like rounds 4 through 6, yeah, that'd be good. But 1, 2, and 3. Does anyone listening who watches this team see any of those three guys like ever becoming, they talked about it in the press conference today, a cornerstone of this franchise, a cornerstone of this defense, or even at a minimum, a quality starter? Doesn't look like it. So, okay, sometimes you have bad draft years. Let's go back to 2022. Round 1, Dax Hill, safety, Michigan. Had to move him to cornerback. Looked okay. Still not first round good, but okay before he tore his ACL. Second round, Cam Taylor-Britt. Looked awesome for 2 years. Absolutely dynamite. This year has fallen off a cliff. Round 3, Zach Carter. They cut him earlier this year. So that's back-to-back years where they spent their first 3 draft picks on defensive players. None of them looked like the long-term solution. Let's go back one more year. This will be the last one. 2021. Of course, round 1, they take Jamar Chase. He ended up being all right. Round 2, they take Jackson Carman, one of the worst picks in modern Bengals history. Okay, so you get to round 3, they take Joseph Osai out of Texas. They take Cam Sample, and they take Tyler Shelvin. Those are in rounds 3 and 4. Again, those are, third and fourth round guys. Osai, I mean, out of all the 9 guys I just mentioned there, their top 3 picks in each of the 3 years between 2021 and 2023, you don't have a starter, a quality starter there. Maybe Dax Hill is your second corner. Maybe Cam Taylor-Britt gets moved to nickel or safety. Those in 3 consecutive drafts, your top 3 defensive players taken. They're fine. There's some solid role guys in there. But some of them aren't on the team. Tyler Shelvin's not with the team. Zach Carter, 2 years ago, third-round pick, got cut this year. The last defensive pick where you say, hey, great pick, Logan Wilson, 2020, round 3, 2020. Coming up on 5 years. That's 5 years that we're going to have since the Bengals have drafted a guy where you say, yeah, hell of a pick with that one. 5 years. Now, maybe some of the guys from 2024 pan out. We'll see. Chris Jenkins shows some flashes. McKinley Jackson. We all like these guys. We hope they pan out. But right now, you got to go all the way back to 2020 before you see a defensive pick. Am I missing someone? Now that I say it out loud, it sounds insane. You got to go back to 2020 before you can find a draft pick that you say, yeah, that was a really good one. In round 3, Logan Wilson was a good one. 2020, you redraft that, he probably goes late second, early first. Late first, early second. So here's the question. Are the players just bad? Are all of those 9 guys? It's not like for the most part, anyone was saying, whoa, the Bengals reached on this guy. Maybe there was some of that here and there. I mean, Dax was a guy that no one really saw coming. Same with Myles Murphy. They kind of saw these guys as projects. We knew that. If the players are just bad, then what's Duke Tobin still doing here? This isn't anything. Data. These facts are not anything remarkable. The front office knows this. So are the players bad? And if so, that falls on Duke Tobin and that small scouting department. If the players are good, as presumably Duke Tobin and company thought they were, are they not being put in position to succeed? I don't know. What's the other solution here? What's the other answer to this question? Why are none of these high draft picks panning out in Cincinnati? It's got to be one of 2 things, and those 2 things are either A, they weren't good players to begin with, not NFL players to begin with, or B, they're not being put in position to succeed. It's either Duke Tobin's fault or Lou Anarumo's fault. You got to figure out whose fault it is and get them out of the building. I'm sorry, they're both nice guys. I love seeing them come up to the mic. If they wanted to come over for a turkey leg and a beer, I'd love to have them. But they're not getting it done when it comes to the things that are happening on the field. And we've seen it work the other way too. Sometimes there are guys, because we've seen the flip side of this, right? B.J. Hill is a great example. In New York, I don't know when they drafted him, but with the Giants, they got rid of him for Billy Price because they were like, he needs a change of scenery. He's not getting it done. He comes to Cincinnati. He's been awesome. He's one of 3 guys this year who I think is any of us. Yeah, he was a third-round pick for them in 2018 for the Giants. Wasn't working out there. Gets a change of scenery in Cincinnati. He's been excellent. One of the few bright spots on defense this year. So it can happen. It could be that one of these guys I just mentioned, who the Bengals have drafted high, ends up with a different team. Some of them will, undoubtedly, end up with a different team over the next couple years and look all right. But it's not happening in Cincinnati. Why is that? One of two guys are to blame. Or at least at the head of the department that has to be blamed. So, whoever's responsible, sorry, but you had a good run. It's time to move on. Bengals have to figure that out because I read that list out loud. That's unacceptable. And I know DJ Turner got hurt this year and he looked okay, but still, he wasn't on the field for most of the year. Second round picks Bengals have got some dogs in the second round. Mixon, Boyd, I'm missing 1,000 guys, but it's late. It's past my bedtime, and I'm obviously having a Ryan Geist here. But anyways, I think I think I made my point there. It's rough. It's rough when you look at the guys and you say, you spent that type of draft capital. I mean, you take Shelvin and Sample away. That's 7 picks in the last 4 years on the first 2 days. You just kind of shrug your shoulders at. You maybe hit a couple singles. I don't know if you hit a double. I don't know that you hit a double. You certainly didn't hit a triple or a homer. That's sad. That's very unfortunate. And someone, again, it's one of two things. Either you're drafting guys who aren't good or you're not putting good guys in position to be great. Whoever it is, you got to figure it out and move on. Last podcast I did on Sunday night had a lot of comments. Thank you to those who chimed in. I wanted to kind of piggyback off that defense. Mike C. commented. Mike, I can't pronounce your last name, but he said, the problem is we should have gotten some help on defense before the trade deadline ended. But we chose to get a running back on an already talented offense. Yep. That's kind of what I've thought about that too. You look at the Carolina Panthers, they've got some guys on defense who would have been solid for the Bengals. People floated Max Crosby. That wasn't going to work. But there were plenty of guys out there because the Bengals don't need, and thanks for commenting, Mike. This is what drives me crazy. And again, this maybe goes back to Duke Tobin. Because it's a twofold thing. People were saying I don't want the team to give up draft capital to get guys. What draft capital? That's the same reason I just talked about is the reason that I don't care if they lose 2 more games so that they get the 7th pick instead of the 12th pick. They're going to screw it up anyways. And Mike's right. Get rid of those picks. This defense is what, late 20s? Let's just say 28th. I don't know where it's ranked. But if you could just get it to 22nd before the trade deadline, get a few more pieces to be better. You don't have to be good with this offense. You don't even have to be average. You just have to be not terrible. You got to be 21st instead of 29th. A few more small pieces. Give up a 3rd round pick for Jadeveon Clowney. He was still playing well. I think just the Panthers defensive line has some guys on it who, past their prime, sure, but they're clearly a team that wasn't going anywhere. And throw a 4th round pick at them. Get some depth on the defensive line. There was just stuff out there. There was stuff out there, and would you had to overpay? Sure. But guess what? The draft picks you would have overpaid with, you're wetting the bet on anyways. Historic offensive season is going to be wasted. Thanks for the comment, Mike. Thanks for getting me all fired up. But that's kind of the point, right? There was never any, as far as the draft picks go, they're going to mess them up anyways. They got a heater there in 2020 and fallen flat since. Simple as that. Okay, I told you, let's end on a positive note. I guess I'm almost done, really. Let's end on a positive note. Now, so look, bear with me. I'm sorry for the negativity I've shown so far, but look, man, the only reason to watch sports is to kind of have fun, right? And I know as a Bengals fan, it's hard to say that this year, but there still is a path there. And there still is a historically good offense. So let's see how they can do it. The Bengals' path to the playoff is not totally insane. So there's one spot left. It'll be a wild card, and it'll either be the Ravens or Steelers. Whoever doesn't win the North, isn't that disgusting to say out loud? One of those two teams will be the 5 seed, and then the Chargers most likely the 6 seed. That leaves a 7 seed. The Bengals are like on the bubble. They're not even in the hunt. They're on the bubble. And then in the hunt, you've got the Colts and the Broncos and the Dolphins. But look at this. I mean, the Broncos easily control their own destiny. Probably the most complete team to go for that. But their remaining schedule, they've got to bye this week. Then they host the Colts, who are going to be playing for everything. But then they've got the Chargers. They come to Cincinnati. And then they close against the Chiefs. So will the Chiefs be resting their starters in that final week? If they lose one more between now and then, they really can't if they want that number 1 seed, because Buffalo is coming for it, and Buffalo beat them in the head-to-head. So the Chiefs have left the Chargers this week on Sunday Night Football, Browns, who stink, but then the Texans, the Steelers, the Broncos. I mean, they've got to be, if the Bills went out, the Chiefs have to stay with their pedal or their foot on the pedal. So the Broncos' remaining schedule, not easy. They are currently, 7-5? 8-5. So I'm just saying, if they go 2-2 there with one of those losses of the Bengals, no, that wouldn't work, would it? They're going to have to go 1-3. Yeah, they would have to go 1-3 with a loss to the Bengals. But again, that's not out of the question. That's not out of the question. Let's say they beat the Colts, and then they've got the Chargers, who are playing excellent. If the Bengals can beat them in Cincinnati, and then they've got the Chiefs, who are playing for a 1 seed. So is it unlikely? Sure. But it's absolutely not crazy. So that could happen. The Dolphins are 5-7. They have a shot, but they go to Cleveland and the Jets the last 2 weeks of the year. They can't function in cold weather. You got New Jersey and Cleveland in the last 2 weeks. They cannot function in cold weather. And they've got to play the Texans as well, who are falling off a little bit, and the Niners. They don't have an easy schedule. And then the Colts, they do have an easy schedule. So that could be an issue, but they have to play Denver, and if they lose to Denver, that does it for them. They would then be 9-8 at best, and that would give Denver their 9th win. So the Bengals have to win out. If you're a Bengals fan, which I assume you are if you're listening to this podcast. If you're not, hell yeah, thank you. The Bengals have to win out. And they've got Dallas, Tennessee, Cleveland, Denver, the most difficult one, and then the Steelers in Week 18. Who knows if the Steelers will be locked into the 5 seed, the 2 seed, the 3 seed. We'll find out. But above all, for the Bengals to have a shot, they have to win out. It's possible. I mean, they're losing to really good teams, mostly. But I'm just saying, the path is not insane. I don't understand quite. I'm bad at math anyways, but how, New York Times has them at 1%, NFL.com has them at 3%, and it only goes up to 4% with a win in Dallas. But I almost think like Joe Burrow is trying the reverse psychology today by saying the playoffs are out of reach at this point. So I don't know, man. It's still there. Root for it. What the hell else are you going to do? Don't root for the draft pick. Why? So they can, go out there and get Dax Hill again? What are you going to do? Frustrating season, but, part of life. That's this happens, I guess. I think Mo Egger, the great Mo Egger, said on Twitter a couple weeks ago, and it really hit me. It's how I feel, but I had never just put it so briefly, is that at my age, with a wife and a daughter, the wins feel better than ever. And the losses, they go away quicker than ever. You kind of have to when you get older because you got other things you got to take care of. So, and then I come on this podcast and I get it all out. It's like when you feel like crap, you go get a workout in, you just get it all out at once, sweat it out. So that way, instead of slugging around all day, you get it out in like an hour. So that's that. Hey, we've always got the Reds to go back to, right? So that'll be fun. That's all I got. I appreciate everyone tuning in. I will be in Dallas. So I'll post content on Twitter and whatever. That's really all I use. And there you hear my battery's going down. But I'll be in Dallas. I'll post plenty of stuff on there. If you, I don't know. We'll see. Just follow the YouTube channel, subscribe. I think I got like 30 new subscribers this week, which is a lot for me. I appreciate you guys doing that. And follow along. Going to Dallas, going to see Jerry World. Been saying for years that we would go to a cool road game every year. And this year, finally sticking to it. So I've been to Lambeau, go to Jerry World now. And then next year, there's a fun slate too. Miami, Minnesota, I forget where else, but there's a lot of cool places. So, follow along or just come back and see me on the podcast whenever you want, or never listen to me again. I would get that. I totally understand. I hate the sound of my own voice sometimes. My name is Matt Edwards. I appreciate you tuning in. This podcast is called In the Jungle, a podcast mostly about the Cincinnati Bengals. If you like it and you're friends with some Bengals fans, say, hey, this here fella has some fun things to say. Maybe give him a shot. If you don't like it, that's okay. There's a lot of good podcasts out there. I hope you find one that you can enjoy. I appreciate you tuning in. I'll be back with another episode probably, get back in Tuesday morning. I don't know. Just subscribe. Tuesday or Wednesday, I'll have something else out. And hopefully it'll be positive. Hopefully those playoff odds are up to like 8%. We'll get the ball rolling. Things will be fun. We'll get a little bit of hope just before they throw us off a cliff in late December. All right. Appreciate you guys tuning in. We'll do it again next week. We'll see you in Dallas.